This is episode 31 of the Home and Family Culture Podcast. I'm Jody Chafee, and in this episode, I interviewed Ann Visser, a relationship mentor, coach, and speaker. Welcome to the Home and Family Culture Podcast, where I discuss how families can discover and design their collective vision, values, beliefs, and traditions that influence their family culture. In this podcast, I interview experts who offer tips and tools to inspire families in this process of developing their family culture, and also successful individuals whose success was influenced by their family culture growing up. Be sure to check out the show notes for this and every episode at homeandfamilyculture.com, where you can subscribe for my weekly newsletter filled with updates on the podcast and blog, as well as other tidbits of information I like to add. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, or YouTube. Please subscribe to your favorite medium. You can also find me on social media at Family Culture Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, and at _Family Culture on Twitter. Be sure to comment, follow, like, rate, and share. But enough about all that. Let's get to the episode. Thank you for listening. A late bloomer in business, Ann started a new adventure working with women as a relationship mentor, coach, and speaker after raising her 5 kids. For the last 15 years, she's helped ordinary women live their extraordinary lives by redefining their marriages, families, and professional careers. Ann is a certified John C. Maxwell coach, mentor, and speaker. Welcome, Ann. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jody. It's just a pleasure to meet you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So the first question I wanted to ask you, tell us more about the nature of your work and the way that you help women in their relationships.
So I am a relationship coach, a speaker, and trainer. I work with women and with couples together with my husband. And so 10 years into our marriage, we were struggling, and we sat outside our favorite restaurant. And I said to him, I can't do this anymore. And he looked panicked and he said, what do you mean? And I said, I can't do marriage like this anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I heard his pain. I was so wrapped up in our 5 children and myself that I hadn't seen him. And so we recommitted to each other that night. And the very next day, I went to my mother-in-law's because I knew she had a library full of self-help books. And I pulled from her book, Making Love Last Forever by Gary Smalley. And he became our very first marriage mentor. And he taught us that conflict was the doorway to intimacy, that how we fought would help us to learn and understand each other's heart. And we didn't fight. We had something that looked more like long, cold, silent wars because we didn't want to fight. We didn't like to fight. But we learned that fighting was important for marriage and there were things worth fighting for. He taught us that communication, there are different levels to communication. And we were only communicating at a very low level of communication. And we learned that, if an ordinary farmer and his wife could fall in love again, anyone could. And so we started 15 years ago working with couples, and I started working with women to help them have thriving relationships through coaching, speaking, and training.
Wow, yeah. That's awesome. That's so beautiful. And I love that you have that experience of going through that trial yourself so that when you meet these people, you say, look what we did. We went through that. We know what you're going through, and we've been able to overcome it. So that's powerful. That's really powerful to have that experience.
That's the biggest thing that we have going for us. We have this incredible hope that lives in us, that if we can do it, anyone can. Yes.
That's so great. Because I think, I'm sure so many couples come to that point. I mean, even great marriages, sometimes we probably arrive at a place where we go, we're kind of growing in different ways or, or things like that. And when you hit that place, it's great to know that there are resources available to learn and to develop your relationship and take it to another level. I think that there's to have hope. There's not you don't have to quit. That's awesome.
Yes. And oftentimes the good part is on the other side.
Yeah.
It's on the other side. Working through that difficult time gives us more resilience in our marriages and in our relationships. And sometimes couples give up too easy, and we say, no, don't give up. Keep pressing through, press on. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard this thing once where it was like, if you think that you're at the end, just wait 5 more years and you will be at have a better relationship than you did before, even when you started. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds hopeful.
I love that. Yes.
So do you mainly focus on marriage, or you mentioned the professional careers and families? How do you help families with those things?
Well, I work with singles. And so I work with singles through a program called How to Avoid Falling for a Jerk. That program was written by Dr. John Van Epp. I love that program. It's very strong, based on research. So I'm able to bring it into our local jail to teach the women how to have thriving relationships, because that's a part of their downward spiral, are the difficult relationships that they're in. And so they love that program. They embrace it. It's fantastic. But we've also been able to bring that into our local school and into youth groups as well for youth retreats. And it's a very, there's a lot of activities involved. And so we keep the kids moving and engaged, and it's an excellent program. As you can tell, I love this program.
That's awesome. I love the title of the program there, Not to Fall for. That's a really great, and I never, it's interesting that you say that it's like the beginning of this trial of these women that end up in jail, that it's like, that a relationship can have that effect on your life.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
fascinating.
It can sometimes make them feel like they're going crazy. And they're so used to being abused and being in difficult relationships that they don't know what it means to be loved and to be cared for. And in fact, they'll tell me, I am bored with a nice guy. And so I try to encourage them, you need to be in that relationship for a little while and be uncomfortable until you get used to being loved and cared for. I also work with women through mastermind programs, just putting our minds together and learning from each other. So facilitate 5 to 7 week masterminds. One of those courses is Be Curious, Stay Curious, which is a course that I wrote for the girls at the jail. But it's really about effective communication and how to communicate deeply. So that's a mastermind that I wrote. I also work one-on-one coaching women. I love the coaching process. So meeting one-on-one with women, coaching is about asking insightful questions to draw out of the woman what is inside, what are her beliefs, what are keeping her from what the goals that she really wants to achieve. And so to work toward that potential. It's a very respectful process and a respectful relationship. I love coaching, and I love being a small part of a woman's journey as she's growing. It's very exciting.
That's awesome.
And so then together with my husband, we also work with couples. We work with distressed couples one-on-one. And then we also run a 5 to 7 week program in the wintertime called Great Dates. We bring couples together. And we meet for 5 to 7 weeks, and we introduce the topic of the evening for about 20 minutes. And then they have the option to either stay in-house and join a small group where we discuss that topic, or they can go out on their great date to a coffee shop or a local restaurant of their choice, and then they can discuss the topic of the evening. Some couples feel safer in the small group. Some couples, they don't want to hear what their spouse has to say in a small group. And other couples, they just they have the small kids at home and they just need some time, just the two of them together. So, yeah, we also do phone coaching, and I do phone coaching for women as well. And I can hear a woman think on the phone. It's the most wonderful thing, because that's what coaching does, right? It tries to stimulate our thoughts and bring us to new thoughts and new beliefs.
So I wanted to talk with you some more about this idea of family culture and the importance of it in our homes and in our relationships.
So how would you define family culture?
So I think that our vision is like the destination. It's what we want our families to look like. And I think family culture is the vehicle that gets us to that vision of that picture of our family and what we want it to be. And so I think that a part of that vehicle, a part of that culture is connection. When you think about a mom, she becomes pregnant and that baby grows within her. And as the baby grows, we feel more connected and more bonded. And then the doctor puts the baby in our arms and we're flooded with oxytocin. That's the super glue of relationships, that hormone that bonds us to our baby. I remember walking down the street with our daughter. She just had her first little girl. And she said to me, "Mom, I didn't know that I could love anybody so much." Yeah. That's that bonding that happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that connection, it needs to be nurtured as our kids get older, so that we can nurture that in different ways, like through family stories. I think that's a very important part of culture. So we define ourselves by our family stories. We celebrate the good things that happen to us through our family stories. They often begin with "remember when." Remember when? And so when I think about celebrating, I think about a family trip that we took, all seven of us in the car. And our oldest boy, he entertained from doorstep to doorstep. So 3 hours of entertainment. We laughed so much because he was telling his old man stories. "When I was young." On and on. And then he would go into his Donald Duck voice, and we just had so much fun. And even as I'm telling you that story, I can just feel it inside, the joy of the family trips and the fun that we had. So family stories are like that, but they're also a way to process our grief or our difficult times. My mom, she was sick with kidney cancer. She passed away about 10 years ago. I remember sitting in this little room with my 3 brothers, my mom and my dad, and the nurse was telling my mom how to take this experimental drug. And she was saying to her, you have to wear gloves when you're taking this drug because it's very powerful. And then you're going to have to flush the toilets a couple of times to make the room safe for everybody. I have to give you a little backstory. My dad was a plumber. And unbeknownst to my mom, he installed low flush toilets. And my mom growled about these toilets that didn't work. And so we're sitting in this little room, and my mom looks at the nurse when she said, "You're going to have to flush a couple of times." And she's put her hands on her hips and she looked at my dad and she said, "Well, I'm going to have to flush more than a couple of times." And we broke up laughing. It was a family joke because my dad had done this. And it helped us in that moment to process, our grief and to share in that moment. But during that time that she was ill, we walked the hospital halls with my brothers. They told me stories, family stories I had never heard before. And I'm so grateful for those moments with my brothers and my sister, where we could share in that moment and share more of those family stories that helped us, reminded us of who we were, of family and how important family was to my mom and to my dad, and helped us to work through that challenging moment. So I think family stories are so important to culture and family culture. That's a silly story, but
no, it's a perfect illustration. It's true. So many families have their own form of grief for one reason or another, and I think it's important to remember that. It's so important to remember that we have an identity that we can foster through those stories and memories, and that those are the things that help us to remember that we're part of something, that we're not just here floating through this great expanse all by ourselves, that we have memories, we have experiences, we have stories that bind us together. So I love that.
I think another way that we can foster that connection is through the family dinner table. I think that the family dinner table is a sacred place. It's a sacred place where we learn to communicate. Some of those family stories come out around the dinner table. We learn our very first communication skills where one person speaks and everybody else listens. Mm-hmm. Such valuable relationship skills to learn. Our family prayed together. And so it's a place to learn that, everything that we have comes from God, our Father. And He is the originator of everything that we have. It's the place to learn that we belong together and we're in this together. It's a place to learn our manners, please and thank you. Such important skills, relationship skills. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a place to feel connected and to teach and to model manners and relationship skills.
So what do you tell mommies with little children that don't sit at the table and they're going, sit down at the table? Oh, wait, that's just me, maybe. I don't know. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old who, especially my 4-year-old, he is wild and crazy a lot of times. And we just have to keep reminding him, hey, we're having dinner together. Come sit down.
And that's exactly it, Jody. It's to hold to that value, and eventually they'll learn that this is sacred time and this is our family time together. And it's just to press in that's one of the things that's worth fighting for. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some things are not worth fighting for, right. Like the length of their hair or, as they get older and they're teenagers, some things are not worth fighting for. But family dinner time, I think it's one of those things that's worth saying and bringing them back again and again. No, this is the time. We're going to sit and eat together, even though it may be challenging and may be difficult.
So, relationships really are at the heart of being able to, you're like a team. Yeah. You have to be able to learn how to it's not just about learning to get along. It's about learning that you belong. Yeah. And that's really,
I love that. Yes.
Where that culture comes in your family is that you all may have that connection with each other. Mm-hmm. And so I love that. Those are two really amazing tips. I love, it's true to have those stories, to have dinner time, to be able to, I love that phrase that it is worth fighting for. I think sometimes it's like, well, some people, like you say, with you and your husband, you didn't like fighting, but it's like, well, some things you really do need to step up and say, this is important. Let's be consistent. Yeah. Let's work at it and fight for this because our families are worth fighting for. So.
Yes. And I think that's key too, is the consistency of it. And just working at it. Yeah. I think that's very important to be able to, so that the kids know what to expect.
Yeah.
There's an expectation that we will sit around the table and we will listen when one person is speaking, mm-hmm. and we will allow everyone opportunity to share. Another great time for connection is playtime. I think it's so important for moms and dads just to put everything away, all the mess, just let it be, and just play on the floor if they're little enough to play on the floor, or run outside and play soccer or ball or, whatever is appropriate for the kids. I lost so many games of hoops to our boys.
Right?
It was an important way to connect with my boys, to be able to, especially the youngest, because he was the last one at home and there was nobody else to play with, and he was used to a tribe of kids to play with, and all of a sudden he was home alone. It was a way for me to connect with him, and it was important for me to make that effort to put everything else away. Whatever was calling me was not as important as this moment with him. 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour.
Yeah.
It's so worthwhile. I think that family playtime is a place to learn that there are rules to follow. Mm-hmm. Eventually as their kids get older, and to learn to cooperate and play together, to learn to let the weaker person win sometimes. Yeah. and then to delight in the one that plays really well too, to be able to let them have their moment of glory as well. I think those are important things because, I don't know, my boys weren't as academic as my girls, and my boys needed that encouragement. It's just the way it was in our family. So they needed that place to excel and enjoy. When our kids were old enough, my husband built a volleyball sand court in our backyard. I call him Mr. Volleyball. I called him Mr. Volleyball. He cried when everybody left home and he couldn't play volleyball anymore. One of those family stories that we have is when our youngest son married. It was a destination wedding, and our daughter-in-law, beautiful Abby, the highlight of her week was the volleyball that we played. She just joined in with family, and we just had such a fantastic time. But the first day that we played on the beach, my family was a little frustrated that other tourists wanted to play with them. They weren't very good team members at that moment. We'd all come from different. We all came from different destinations, and we just wanted to be together. So my husband said, "Okay, 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, be here. We're going to play volleyball together before everybody else gets up." And I looked at him and I said, "Honey, there is no way that our family is getting up on holiday at 7 a.m. to be on the beach with you to play volleyball. That's not happening." Everybody showed up.
Wow.
Everybody showed up.
That's awesome.
I was so wrong.
That's awesome. That's so cool that you found that's like a thing that brings you all together, and you can all, come together for that. We're the family that plays volleyball at 7:00 in the morning, apparently. That's so cool. So one other thing that I wanted to talk to you about and ask you about is I heard you speak about these 5 magic hours that you talked about, ways that foster healthy relationships with our spouses. And so I wanted to give you a minute to cover what those 5 magic hours are and how they foster our spouse, our marriage relationships.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to have moments of connection that are built into our marriage, and they become habits. And so it makes it easy. You don't think about it. It just happens. Mm-hmm. And then when it does happen, this is it. This is the moment I'm connecting with you. And I'm going to take an extra moment to pause here and make sure I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. And so one of those magic moments can be our partings. So typically we say goodbye at some point during the day. And, even if I think we work from home, it's important to say, okay, bye, and have that moment of embrace, have a goodbye kiss, and make sure that I know what's happening in his day today. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's just 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So if it's 2 minutes, 5 days a week, that adds up to 10 minutes a day. And then there are the embraces when we come together again at the end of the day. So to make it a moment, to make it an event where we hug, where we kiss, I'm so happy to see you. Okay, so we dog sat my father's dog. Her name was Moxie. This dog would run to greet my husband at the door, and I thought, this dog is making me look very bad. So I started embracing him like, I'm so glad to see you.
Won't be outdone by a dog.
I know, for sure. But I think it is so important to welcome each other back after the day is done, and to be happy and to foster that connection that we have with one another. Another moment of connection are the meals that we eat together. Maybe it's 1 or 2 meals. I think they're important. The dinner table again. We pray together every morning. Most every morning we sit together and we cuddle and we pray. They're moments of connection. Sometimes they're the highlight of my day. I just love that moment of connection where we connect spiritually as well as actually hugging. Mm-hmm. And then there is, at the end of the day, we spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes talking about what is the highlight of your day, what was the low point of your day, what do you appreciate about me today, and then finally, what was your God moment of the day. And sometimes that launches off into other conversations, but even when we're really tired, this exercise is easy. It's easy to remember. It's easy to do. It helps us to feel connected, even though we might be really busy. And we often learn things about each other that we might forget to tell each other otherwise. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so it's the consistency of doing it every day or most every day that it really changed our mindset. Mm-hmm. And it made me think about, this is the high point of my day in the middle of my day. It gave me a sense of gratitude. Another habit is a weekly date. So about 2 hours for a weekly date. Mm-hmm. We like day dates. We're not really into night dates so much. We like beach walks. We live here in Prince Edward Island, and beautiful beaches. Even in the wintertime, it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so we prefer geocaching or hiking. So we love day dates. So we try to do that on Saturday or Sunday on the weekend. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when you start to add up each of these moments of connection, they add up to 5 magic hours. Now, Gottman has recently added another hour onto the 5 magic hours. Mm-hmm. And that last hour, he says, is an hour of talking about your concerns and your fears in a way that helps your partner understand where you're coming from. And it gives your partner the opportunity to listen to your heart and to hear what your concerns are.
I love that. I really like that, the importance of that connection before you separate and when you come back together. I think that really, all of them obviously are awesome. But those ones two stood out to me because, that's something that it's, I've thought of you, I know that you're important to me, and I'm sorry that we have to separate, and I'm happy that we're back together. And in this relates to in the book Hold On to Your Kids by Gordon Neufeld. He talks about that type of a relationship with your kids, where how important it is that when they come home, you collect them, is what he calls it. You bring them in, you make eye contact, and you get them to nod and smile. It's about something, if it's, and that allows you to bring them back into your heart, basically. And so I really like that whole idea that, you need to do that with your spouse too. You need to collect each other and say, you're important to me, and I like that you're back in my life today. So I really like that idea, that to make sure that that's something you're doing with your spouse too.
That is beautiful. That's beautiful, Jody. I love that line. Collect each other. Yeah. Collect each other. It's beautiful.
Well, I like too the things that you say because one of the things that I've been thinking about is this whole idea of going from just surviving to thriving. And I like your story that that you came to a place after 10 years where you said, we're not thriving anymore, and and that you've been able to go from that from surviving to actually thriving, and being able to then turn around and share that with other people. Is really awesome, because I think that that's so important. We don't want to just be in our families just to survive, just to go from one day to the next and not make connections with each other. But those 5 magic hours are pretty awesome, because you make that conscious effort to connect, and how important that connection really is, and to make it an intentional part of your day. Because I think that we can, part of family culture is that you do have to be intentional about it. You have to because if you go from day to day to day not really thinking about it, then it will get away from you. And then you go, wait, we're back to surviving again. We want to be thriving. What happened? How have you and your husband developed a team mentality or partnership where you recognize your respective roles in the success of your family?
I was talking to my husband about this lately, and he said to me, I see us before I see me. And so we often talk about there's 3 people in our marriage. So there's you and there's me, but then there's we. And that we is it's a whole other entity. It's a whole other personality, because it's bringing 2 of us together, and it needs to be nurtured. And what's good for you and me is not always good for us or the we. in us. And I think that came to us like a big puzzle. And there were different pieces to that puzzle. And we've been together for 37 years. We've been married 37 years. And one of those puzzles was the communication and the conflict, learning to conflict better. Those were two of the pieces of the puzzle. Other pieces of the puzzle were, I remember driving on holiday into the mountains of Banff. And as the mountains were getting larger, I was reading his needs, her needs to him, and he was driving. And he shared with me that his number one need was words of affirmation, and that he didn't know that I appreciated him. And I could have cried because I didn't know that he didn't know how much I appreciated him and how much I truly love him. And I started then words of affirmation for him. And I just saw him open up because I was all of a sudden speaking these words of affirmation over him. And he knows now that I really like him. I really appreciate him. And of course, that high-low appreciation has also helped too. But that was another piece of the puzzle that was missing from our picture. Something else that was missing from our picture and that we had to work on was the pain from our past. He shares his story about emotional abandonment and having felt like he hadn't connected with his mom and dad in a way that he would have liked to. That was a thorn in our marriage that took a while to figure out where that was coming from and what it was, because his mom and dad are still together, or still alive, and they never left. But this was an emotional connection that he hadn't felt. And it was keeping us from connecting because he hadn't learned how to do that. That was another piece of the puzzle that we had to work through together as a couple. And I had to, at first when he would be triggered, I would say, "This is not my problem. This is your problem. You deal with it." And that wasn't very healthy. And when I started to ask him, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? He started to be able to answer that question and started to be able to talk about it. And eventually we were able to get to the bottom of that. That piece of the puzzle helped us to become better as a team, better together, better as an us. Yeah. And I really think that it's important for mom and dad, that relationship that we have together. We tell our couples, the most important thing that you can do for your kids is to love each other, is to just love on each other. Your kids will see you model that love and that compassion that you have for each other. They'll see that you hold each other in high value, that you treasure each other, that you cherish each other. And I was just reading in my diary lately, our daughter was just little, and she wrote, "My mom loves my dad. I love that when my mom loves my dad."
That you can have a healthy relationship and they see it, and then they aim for that. Yeah. Because they have that. They see you modeling that. That's awesome.
Yes.
And I like that. It's so interesting that, it's not just my problem or his problem. It's our problem. Like whatever we're each going through, it affects our relationship, and that's important to see it that way.
I'm so grateful for my husband. He's a farmer, so he works hard and he works long hours. But lately I've been working very hard on this business. And he said to me, "I'm going to take all of the domestic chores off of your plate. I just want you to be able to focus on what you're good at and what you're doing, so that let's just see what we can do with this." So it's us together. And I feel his support so strongly, and I'm so grateful for that. And I feel so treasured, so cherished. Yeah. Very much like a team.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we're a team, we said "I do" at the wedding. I see a future with you. And so I'm committed to you. And I know that, he would say to me, "I know that I'm giving to you a lot right now, but I know that it's going to come back sometime in the future. And I'm not counting what I'm giving, because it's mutual, it's reciprocal. And I know that it will come back someday,
Yeah. Yeah. I see that, my husband and I, we've gone through some ebb and flow like that too, where it's like sometimes,
Mhm.
he'll be having a rough time with his job or, things like that. And I'll be like, well, and I try to boost him up, I try to help him or, we feel that way. And then there are times when I've been dealing with, new babies and postpartum or, things like that.
Mm.
And then he's been my strength. He's been the one that's been bringing me up. And so it really is. It's not just, well, that's your problem at work, so just leave it at work. No, he needs to come home and be I think that there have been many, I can say years that he's been enduring some of things with work that if he didn't have me as a support, he would not have been able to endure, and vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
And so it
Yeah.
really is crucial that, what each of us are going through, we need to have that support from the other.
Mm-hmm.
And because there have been times where he's like, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm such a burden because of these things I'm going through. Or, same the other way around. And it's like, no, you're not a burden because you supported me when I was struggling with having, new babies or, self-esteem or whatever, issues that we've been going through. And so it's like, no, you're not a burden because I know that you would do the same for me. And that when we support each other, we will get through it. It's not something that's you have to endure by yourself. Well, thank you so much, Anne. I love these insights, these ideas. It's so important that we foster these connections with our families and that have that vision for our family, and all of these things that you say, like it's the vehicle. That's what's going to get us there, to have the connections and those stories and the time that we spend together is so important. What are your last words of wisdom that you would want to share with our listeners?
I just want to encourage couples, if they're going through hard times, to have hope and to work through it, and to work through when you get to the other side. It's so sweet. It's so worth the fight. The marriage is worth the fight. And to get help, don't hesitate to get help. There's lots of help out there. There are so many coaches and so many vehicles to help us to get well again. There's so many books that are written just to get help and to find that help that they need in order to get to the other side. And for couples that are doing great, just keep on going, keep enriching your marriage. Don't stop. We never stop growing. We never stop knowing. So just keep it up. Yeah. Because you are the leaders in your family, and that will trickle down to your kids. They'll see that love being modeled for them, and they will grow.
Where can we find you, Anne? Are you on social media or anywhere we could look you up?
Yes, for sure. You can look me up at 4better. That's the number 4, 4betterforever.com. And I have so I'm on Facebook, and you can also find me, my website as well, 4betterforever.com. And I have a gift to give to your listeners. It's a listening quiz, and I would love to give that to your listeners. Anyone that wants to sign in, can we put that link at the bottom of your podcast?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
In the show notes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Anne. I had a wonderful conversation with Anne. She's a great person. I love all the tips and resources that she discussed and the things that she provides and the services that she provides as a mentor, speaker, and a coach. Go to my show notes at homeandfamilyculture.com, and you can see a link to her website and also the quiz that she's provided for our listeners. So be sure to go to that website and check out the things we talked about and the books that we recommended. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for supporting me on this podcast. You can find me on social media at Family Culture Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and on Pinterest too. And you can find me on Twitter at _Family Culture. Thank you so much for listening. Please like and share and comment and rate and all those wonderful things. Thank you.